I'm working on view A, so this is the one piece option of the pattern, and you'll have a front and a back, and you will be cutting one of each out of your main fabric and out of your lining fabric. And on the back, there's the option to have the back go scooped lower, which gives you the ability to have the swim hook or the tie at the back of your top. But if you opt for the back to go all the way up your back and just have a cutout, then you'll need to do a back option that is cut on the fold and that doesn't unclasp. And then also the other option you have on this view is to do a higher leg cut or a lower leg cut, just depending on how much coverage you want. So I went ahead and cut out, on mine I'm using the lower leg cut and then the scoop in the back. So I cut out two of, this is the scoop back part, and then this is the front. And whenever I was cutting it out, I went ahead and marked where my centers were. I put a little mark, the center on the top and the bottom. It just kind of helps line things up. And your first step is going to be to put them right sides together for both your main fabric and for your lining fabric. And we're going to do the same step on both. On the main fabric, we're going to sew, let me scoot it up, we're going to sew this crotch seam. And then once that seam is sewed, we're going to line up our side seams and we're going to sew our side seams. And we're going to do that on both sides and on the main and the lining. Mind you, on swim fabric, the right side is just whichever side you think is softer. And you can also kind of tell that there's a difference in each side, and which side you decide to put, nobody will know as long as it's the side that you think is the softest. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sew those on each. I'm going to sew my side seams and my crotch, and then I will be ready for my next step. Now that you've finished your main and your lining, you are going to have two pieces, and we're going to put our main right side facing out and then leave our lining with the right side facing in. And we're going to just slip our lining into our main, lining up all of our points. So once it's in there, you're going to grab it and match the crotch. And then once you have them all matched up, we're going to baste. And where we're going to baste is the openings, where we're going to be applying elastic and all of that. So you'll just want to line everything up. That's why one of the reasons I like to mark my back is also just for lining up. It's also great whenever you're quartering or halving elastic. So I'll just put a clip where these different points are to kind of help them stay together. And when I baste, I'm going to put my machine on the longest stitch length, and I'm going to just run that all around. So I'm going to go all around my top opening, all around my leg openings, and this isn't a step that's you have to do before applying elastic, and I've even seen swim patterns that don't even suggest basting, but to me basting is one of the most important things you can do when you're sewing swim, just because swim by nature is going to be slicker to allow the water to glide off of it. And because of that, whenever you're trying to apply elastic, you're going to be stretching that elastic. So it's really hard to stretch elastic and then at the same time line up edges. So the basting is just a quick way to not have to do a million pins and get everything nice. So I'm going to go to my machine, I'm going to get my basting done, and then I'll be ready for the next step with you.
Okay, so we have the bottom part of our one piece constructed. So your front will look like this, and you can tell your front because of the narrower crotch. And then your back can also go up if you chose that option, or you could have the scoop back. Now all we have left on this is to apply our elastics. We've already basted all of our openings. And I'm going to start with my leg holes. So you're on your elastic cut chart, you'll go to the one piece section, and I'm choosing the lower leg, so whichever line you cut on is what elastic length you'll choose. And on mine, the lower leg, the extra small is 17 inches long. by 3/8 inch is the width of the elastic. So I'm going to cut 2 of those, and I'm going to start by applying them to the inside. Now, the special part about applying the elastic is that you always want to do your front first, because you aren't stretching on the front. You're only stretching on the back of from the side seam to the crotch seam. So it's wise to start on the front so that you can apply it one for one, just keeping it taut, and then you can see how much length you have to go, and you know exactly how much to stretch. While if you start on the back and you just start stretching, you might end up not being able to guess accurately what you need for the front. So that means on one leg, you're going to be starting at the crotch seam, while on the other leg, you'll start at the side seam, so that you're able to apply the elastic on the inside. So I'm going to use my serger to apply the elastic. You can also just use your sewing machine. It doesn't make a difference. If you use your machine, use a zigzag stitch. Okay, so I have one elastic already installed, and I just wanted to show you how it is going to look bunched on the bottom area, but that's what you want, and you don't want any bunching on the front of the crotch. So I'll show you how I apply it on this one. This one I get to start on my crotch point, and you can just give it a really good check to make sure you're starting in the right spot, because the front that you don't need to be stretching is much narrower than your back. And so you just lay your elastic down at that seam, and do not start doing anything until you see it catch that. And we're not stretching, but you're just going to make sure it catches that elastic. I leave my knife engaged to trim off just a little bit, but you are not trimming your elastic, so just pay attention. I only let it trim if for some reason, like my lining in Maine, when I basted it, that they weren't exactly flush, but you don't even have to let it trim that. And if it makes you nervous and you notice you keep catching your elastic, just go ahead and disengage your knife. So I'm not stretching it, but I am giving it a nice firm to keep it taut, so I'm not just letting it loosely go in there. I'm kind of giving it a little tension, but not stretching. I don't know if that makes sense, but okay. And now, once I see that I've cleared, one of the reasons I keep my knife engaged is I want it to trim off all these extra threads where the seams. So once it's cleared, see, now I'm at that seam, the side seam. I have this much left, and I have this much to go. I don't know if you can see, but I have this much left and that much to go. So I have a ways to stretch. So you're going to give your elastic a nice firm stretch. And if when you're stretching it, you notice it's struggling a little bit, then also pull from this side, because technically you're pulling it right out from underneath, and it might not like that. So sometimes I just keep my hand ready over here to help if it's having an issue. Okay, so you can see all that. Now I'm going to remove my basting stitches. You don't have to, it's just my preference. And then once I've done that, I'm going to apply elastic to the scoop cutout in the back. So all along here. Okay, so I am top stitching down my elastic. So all you need to do is fold it under like this. And then on the areas where you've stretched, you're gonna need to stretch your elastic so that you're not sewing puckers into your top stitching. So all throughout the bottom area of your swimsuit, you are stretching that elastic as you go. But then whenever
whenever I get to the front area where I didn't stretch, since it's not stretched, I'm not going to have to stretch there. You don't want to stretch it any more than you need just to remove any kind of puckering. Because if you stretch it here where you hadn't stretched it before, then you're going to cause gaping. So you're just wanting to fold it over on the area where you hadn't stretched when you were applying it. Okay, I'm going to show you what this looks like. Okay, so all through the bottom, it looks like this. And then when it's on your skin pulled tight, it's going to look, see, like that. And then the front, where I didn't stretch, it's just going to look like this. So now I'm going to do the other side, same thing. Okay, so now that I've done all my leg openings on the one piece, all I have left is my scoop back. And so if you've done it to where it connects here, you're gonna look at your elastic chart and you're gonna look at one piece, it's the top line, and you're going to do the cutout option. And that means that you're cutting 2 pieces of elastic that are going to be, they range between 10.5 inches to 16.5. But if you have it to where it's a low back that doesn't connect at the top, which is the version that I'm sewing for view A, you're only cutting 1, and it's gonna be a long piece of elastic starting at 24 inches. And it's 3/8 of an inch, just like the other one. We're gonna apply it the same way we did our leg openings. We're going to start at the top and we're going to apply it all along on the wrong side, giving it an even stretch. I'm gonna go ahead and mark where my halfway point is and line that up with the halfway point on my back. And then once we've sewn it to that side, same way, we're gonna fold it under and then top stitch it. Okay, so I'm at my machine and I'm going to start with my elastic. I'm gonna go ahead and start by applying it at away from that seam line. Otherwise, if it starts all the way at the top, then whenever I sew it into the top of my swimsuit, then it's just going to add more bulk in that seam, and it's not necessary to have elastic in that seam right there from that angle. So I'm going to start right there, about 3/8 inches away. And you don't want to do any stretching until you can see that your elastic's been cut in your seam. And on this one, I ran out of my rubber elastic, so I'm using the Joann's Cotton Swimwear elastic. And I'm just giving it a slight stretch. I'm going to end up having to cut some off at the end. And that's just because this elastic is not as firm as an elastic as my rubber. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you are applying elastics, that the elastic measurement chart is good to follow, but then you also have to keep in mind the kind of elastic that you're using. So if I was using my regular rubber elastic or some of my other more firm elastics, I wouldn't need to be cutting any off at the end. But this one, since I can see it's not as firm of a stretch and recovery, that I am going to end up having extra, and that's okay. That's why watching sew-alongs are great, because it's like I can give you permission. See, I ended up cutting off a few inches. Or you can listen to me and say, oh my goodness, she should be following the instructions. Okay, I have it all applied. And now I'm just gonna, or first I'm gonna remove my basting stitches, and then I'm going to fold it under and top stitch the same way that I did my leg openings. Okay, I'm at my regular machine, and I have my zigzag stitch set to a 2.8 in the length, and then a 3.0 on the width. And I've removed my basting stitches, and now I'm going to just top stitch it. Even if you have a cover stitch, there's lots of people who still use their regular machine to sew swim. You have so much more control when you're top stitching to take your time and So it's really up to you. If you're used to your cover stitch with sewing swimwear, definitely use it. It's a great tool. You see how I'm just slightly stretching my elastic just so that, you know, it lays flat. You don't want to overstretch it because then it'll gape. You just want to stretch it to where whenever on this side there's no puckers, so that you're not sewing puckers into your swimsuit. Okay, so now that we have completely finished our bottom, yay, exciting. So it's going to look like this, where it's kind of bunched, but that's right, because when it's on your body, it'll grip your body, and then it'll be like that. So you're done with your bottoms, and now you can construct any top that you would like. The only difference is on view A, the top that you choose, if you have the back that is not the scoop back, here, let me scoot it back so you can see. If you have the back that is not the scoop back and it's going to connect at the top, then you're limited. You have to choose an option where the back doesn't have a closure or ties, because you're not going to be able, you need to be able to connect that back into the seam allowance. So pick whatever top you want. If you did the scoop back, you can pick any view you want for your top. And now, once you have that constructed, the only step that you're going to do different in constructing your top is that, here, look at me. The only step that you're going to do different when you're constructing your top is that you're not going to top stitch your band down, the seam allowance to your band at the end, because we're going to sew this into that seam allowance where your band connects to your top's body. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull the one that I've constructed out for this, and I'll show you how to do that.